Hey, this is Ty.
And this is Joe. Welcome back to the 2B podcast.
We are so excited to have you guys here. I can't wait for the conversation we're going to have. But before I go any further, as you know, we're two Black educators based out of Boston, seeking Black excellence, and so much more. Joe, tell them a little bit more.
We are seeking not only excellence, but to learn from other people who we find also excellence so that we can improve ourselves. And that is what we are going to do on this show, as well as figure out what are celebrations all about. So I am super excited.
That's right. Today is July 2nd, 2020. And before we get this thing really jumped off, before we get started, I just want to remind you, make sure you're following us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at the number 2BE podcast.
Yes. And if this is the first show that you've tuned into, welcome. We're super happy to have you here, but we want to let you know you can catch up by listening to us on wherever podcasts are found. You got Google, you got Apple, no problem. We got you. Find us at 2B Podcast and catch up on all of the good stuff that we have been doing for, 3.5 months. I do say myself.
Episode 13.
Episode 14. It's 14. That is crazy. Oh my goodness. So yes, welcome, follow us, listen, and like strap in for an awesome show. So if you can't tell, what holiday might I represent? One guess.
I was thinking the Red Cup said that, but I'm going with July 4th. That'd be my final.
Oh, you be almost right. Kind of. Yes. July 4th. We'll go with it. Yes. So it's Independence Day coming up, and thoughts, feelings. Independence Day.
So for me, I mean, in my family, it was a holiday that people had off of work. Sometimes we would come together and have a cookout, maybe a small gathering, but it wasn't really something that we celebrated as much as it was opportunity for us to be together as family, to break bread, and that was always welcomed. And then, of course, living in the Northeast, your summer days are precious. You only have so many days of great weather, so you try to take advantage of them at all costs.
I am learning that, after 4 days of rain, I was like, what is happening? So I'm still learning that. So yeah, Independence Day is coming up, and we can be honest on this show, right? So I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone with a friend, and I literally say out loud, like, I'm really struggling with this race thing. And I'm talking to a person of color, a Black man, and he's like, what did you say? Did you just say I'm really struggling with this race thing? And I was like, oh, right. I should preface my thoughts, right? So I'm like, July 4th was always a huge holiday for me. We would go to this big stadium at the college nearby, and we would watch fireworks, and we would grill, and it was like a big ordeal, and it was super, super fun. And as I've continued on my race journey and thinking about, the protest of the national anthem and reading about like Frederick Douglass and his speech to some white people basically saying like, why did you bring me here? Like, are the courtesies extended in the Declaration of Independence given to me? I think not. So it's almost like a mockery. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, as I'm learning more, I'm questioning my celebrations.
As you should.
And so you might be like, did you really question very hard? Look at you. Yes.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me.
I did. Okay. Does anybody know what today is?
Is that like the song from Tony? Do you know what today is? Are we going with that or no?
No, we're not going with that, but that was good. That's a good answer. I wish more wrong answers were that good.
Oh. I'll probably listen back to this and think that I didn't sound that great, so who knows. But today's July 2nd.
Yes, you can do it. You can do it. Come on, come on.
You got to tell me, where are we going with this?
Okay, July 2nd was the day that Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. And the Civil Rights Act, truthfully, is like the day that we started to truly do away with the Jim Crow and the past and truly evolve. And most of our progress as Black people started on that day. So I think that from now on, this day will be my Independence Day. That's why hence the lipstick, red, white, and blue. But today, not July 4th, today, the day that, you know, we said no more discrimination on the basis of race, sex, gender, religion. So yeah, I think today should be the day the day I will be celebrating my independence.
I think ultimately what you're really portraying right there, Joe, is that July 4th for so many Americans, and not just the Black Americans, but for Americans in general, is a complicated day. No more so than this year, right? Because July 4th just isn't the same, right? We like to joke and say things don't hit the same, and this July 4th is not going to hit the same. And I think that part of what you discussed in terms of, you know, expanding your learning and understanding of July 4th, and we should really do this with every American holiday, is really understand what occurred that brought about this holiday. And so for July 4th to be an Independence Day, as you mentioned, for so many folks in America that are part of marginalized communities, I won't even list them, they're so long, the list is so long. July 4th doesn't feel like an Independence Day. It doesn't feel like a day to celebrate freedom when you don't feel like you actually have that. You may have that per se in a physical sense, but in a mental sense, you recognize that you're not free in this country because of the plight that you've had to endure with the systematic racism that has gone on for centuries, right? And I think that I was pleased, right, to see so many Black folks, especially, celebrate Juneteenth this year. And I know there were a lot of Black people that I spoke to personally that had never heard of the holiday, didn't really know the background to it, and they were educating themselves, whether it be via social media, YouTube videos, podcasts. And I think that that's the space that I really hope that people are in, is that I want you to go out and learn on your own, right? Take it upon yourself to learn, educate yourself, as we say at the end of the show, and decide for yourself, is this something that I still want to celebrate? And maybe you still do.
Yeah.
Or maybe, in your case, you've decided that, you know what, I'm going to take a different route. Maybe there's another day that makes more sense to me, that connects more with my spirit, with my family, that we want to celebrate and take hold as our own tradition. And I think that that's really the space we're in. When we talk about why we're taking down statues, why we're looking to remove or change or alter or edit history books, is that so we can get to the truth. And then once we've gotten to the truth, then I think all of us collectively can decide, all right, now that we know the real truth, the whole truth, this may not be what I really want. It's going to hit a little different.
It might hit a little different. And I think this is a really cool picture, by the way. If you didn't know, Martin Luther King was actually at the signing of the Civil Rights Act. And again, it banned job discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, or national origin. And King and other activists were there for the signing. And I just think that is incredible. And Ty, I think you've actually touched on this before.
Mm-hmm.
When, or maybe a bunch of people have said this, but like, when Black people get freedom and when we do what's right for Black people, look how many people were benefited from the Civil Rights Act. Because it didn't just say Black people. No. It said race. It said religion. It said gender. It said place of origin.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this was in large part to Martin Luther King, you know, the march in Birmingham, excuse me. I said it like I was English.
The accent's coming out. But to your point, one thing I have been, again, pleased to see is there seems to be somewhat of an awakening or a understanding in the Asian community specifically that I've seen, that I've noticed with some colleagues, friends, and then just in general on social media with folks that are leading the community, the Asian community, saying, hey, there's a reason why we should also be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. And a lot of that has to do with that Civil Rights Act that was signed because it provided an opportunity for so many people to come over to the United States to immigrate, to be able to flee their countries for whatever reason that they were leaving, to be able to then come here and seek out that freedom that Black people, along with others, but mainly Black people in the 60s really truly fought for, and before that. So it is, to your point, whenever Black people succeed, I do believe that in America as a whole, we succeed, right? Because we are fighting for something that is going to benefit us, but then also benefit others along the way.
Yes.
And one narrative that I continue to see and I appreciate and believe in is that Black people are not selfish people.
No, say it again.
We're willing to share. We offer up our culture. We're willing to, open our arms to our community, and sometimes at our detriment, right? And that's just the fact of the matter. But at the same time, nonetheless, we joke about it saying you're invited to the cookout and things like that, since we're in the celebration spirit. But Black people want to engage and incorporate others. And I think that in general, the more as a collective, as Americans, we celebrate cultures, all types of cultures, the more that we experience that through food, through music, through conversation, through learning. It's just a beautiful thing. I mean, I truly just love culture, but that's a whole nother episode. Let's get to where we're supposed to get to.
But yes, agreed on all points. And speaking about how marches can bring about change, today we're actually going to speak to 3 people who have organized marches in their communities, and they are amazing. I feel honestly very honored and privileged to know these people personally. They're not just like, hey, we hit you up. Like I have their phone numbers because they are awesome people. The first person that I would like to introduce is Sarah Idrisu, and Sarah is a Black educator and mother. She is the executive director for E4E, and that might sound really familiar because we love E4E, Educators for Excellence. So she's up there making sure it's running smoothly, and it's amazing. She is the co-founder of March Like a Mother, and Sarah's using her passion for policy and education to create a better world for her beautiful Black son and all Black people now and to come. So that is Sarah. And then you want to do the next one, Ty?
No, you got it.
Oh, I do. The next one is Crystal. Crystal's a cisgendered white woman. She has been a high school history teacher and special educator. She's a mom of two teenagers, and she is dedicated to empowering youth and challenging herself to engage in the difficult conversations necessary to reduce racial bias and dismantle systemic racism and heal our society of the 400 years of oppression that has been inflicted on Black people. She is the co-organizer of Medway Marches, and with her comes Marcus Crosby, who is a Black man having lived a majority of his life in the suburbs. He was raised by strong parents who taught him to know who he is, where he came from, and use that to determine where he is going. And he used that mission to co-organize the Medway Marches as well. And he is the parent, the father of 3 beautiful Black and Puerto Rican children with Angelica Crosby. And he is also working in the technology sector. And he aims to make his community, workplace, and society more inclusive for all. Please welcome Sarah, Crystal, and Marcus.
Woo!
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Where do they come?
I'm looking. I'm like, where?
I'm so generous.
Y'all are awesome. Happy you're here. Woo! So please tell us about yourselves. Crystal, will you start? Tell us. We want to know more about you, because that was just a little.
Yeah, that was a little bit, but I mean, that was pretty good. Like I said, yes, like you said, I'm an educator. I'm a history teacher. I am also a special educator. I actually work specifically with students whose special education needs often are rooted in trauma, which brings me to this work. Specifically, because often, unfortunately, not always, but very often, that trauma can be traced back to some of their earliest experiences with the police. and that ties within their own homes, within their own family. So that's incredibly compelling for me to feel absolutely like this is a necessary thing for me to be involved in. We talk a little bit, I won't go on and on, but I mean, so in terms of like, you know, what brings you to, you know, organizing this march, for me, it was never a question of any of that. It was like, how could I not? It never crossed my mind about if it was the right thing to do, or if it's something that I should be involved in. It was, oh, nobody's doing this. Well, somebody has to. So I'm here. It must be me. Other than that, I started my career in the UAE. I spent 10 years living in Dubai, teaching there, which, you know, also in a very diverse population. I learned a lot. While I was there, I benefited tremendously from some relationships that I had with the women of color that I worked with. I'm incredibly thankful for the very honest relationships that we had and some of the very difficult conversations that we had, that I don't think that I would be as well prepared to do this work if it hadn't been for those women.
Hear that. Hear that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Crystal. Where do I start? So I actually started my career in activism, or my life in activism, when I was 11, because I wanted to. I was in Ethiopia and we left because of a civil war. I'm Eritrean. And when I came to the United States, I heard a lot about how amazing the resources would be, and then ended up in really terrible schools, DC. And when I say terrible, I felt unsafe. I was scared. I heard crazy things from adults. They didn't believe in us. And I knew better. And I was like, how did I come from a third world country to the world's most powerful country to be treated like this? And so I started advocating for myself to get a better education. And I did get a better education. I went to schools in the suburbs. But that feeling of why me, and that I shouldn't be the only one, and the feeling of exceptionalism drives my activism. And I believe that our systems have to work for everybody. It shouldn't be about, oh, this one or this one, because then you can say, why not the rest of you? This person can do it. And I was often the example of that. Like, how come you, Sarah, made it and not your siblings? And they actually frowned upon my siblings, when in fact, like, they were the people that were disserviced. And so now I'm the executive director of Educators for Excellence. My goal is to build teachers like yourselves and to make sure that there's a space for that community to grow and to provide the tools for capacity building. But then in my life, I worked with LaToya Gale to create March Like a Mother, because she's also a Black mother of 3 children. I have 1 child. We're just crying. That feeling of like, we heard a grown man cry for his mother. You can't unsee that. And like LaToya says, when a child cries or says mama, all moms look. Have you seen that in the playground? And that was our response. And for me, I had to do that, or I would still be grieving. It was cathartic to see all those Black women and the mothers show up. But it's not the end, right? There's still a lot more to do, which I'm excited. I'm excited that everyone's becoming radicalized and getting informed. And we're seeing people that don't look like us also interested in the work, and inviting them in is really important, as well as like making sure they do their own work. And so I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hard to follow that one, but Marcus Crosby here. And I would say that, you know, my work has really begun through knowing people that are still looking for their identity and trying to fit in. As you know, Joe said, I was raised in the suburbs, and so I had family in the inner cities, and so I would kind of get my culture and, you know, my blackness, so to speak, from that. But then, you know, Monday through Friday, I'm in the suburbs as one of 4 Black kids in a school of 2,000 plus kids. And so, you know, I constantly found myself either trying to fit in trying to preserve my Blackness, trying to just figure out my place. And, you know, whether that was, you know, with sports, with friends, with girls, it was a process. And, you know, I really didn't find myself until I did go to college, and I went to Northeastern here in Boston, and I was immersed in so much culture, and I really got to join in with student groups. And so I eventually became the president of the National Society of the Northeastern Student Black Association. And so through NDSA, I was able to do some activism and help, you know, teach culture and just do a lot of work on campus that was so beneficial for, you know, myself and others. And so after college, I was able to use some of those connections, you know, in the workplace. And then I get into work, and there's all kinds of employee resource groups for Black employees, and, you know, trying to help bring other Black workers into the tech space, and just so much work that goes on behind the scenes there that I've been really fortunate enough to help out with. So as Crystal said, you know, it just made sense when we were discussing, you know, as a few friends of, you know, should we go into a march or into a protest? And it was, why not organize our own? And, you know, it was able to help facilitate more conversations with my kids as well on, you know, everything going on. So
I think the unifying thing I heard there was passion. Like all of y'all were passionate and inspired to take action on that passion. Will you speak a little bit more to all of you touched on your marches? Will you tell us more about the inspiration and about the march that you organized? And Sarah, I just wanted to let you know, Lil Bilal is cute. We love his little like, I'm happy sounds. Like, don't you mute yourself. Don't mute yourself, Mom. He's so cute. That's a happy baby.
Yes. I was like, okay, glad y'all like it.
Yeah, so tell us about the march you organized and more about your inspiration. Whoever wants to start can start.
Yeah, I can start, and Crystal, feel free to jump in. So as I said, you know, for us, Crystal and I, you know, we're a part of another group within Medway that, you know, we started off just with, you know, quick discussion and social gatherings just to share our stories here in town. And, you know, through that group, I think a few of us were talking about going into Boston for some of the protests. And it was tough for us. You know, we're about an hour almost away from Boston, and, you know, a bunch of us have kids and other things going on. And so we said, hey, if we can't make it tonight in Boston, why not do our own thing? And from there, you know, 8 of us actually decided, hey, let's do it. I was out of town. Crystal and a few others, you know, went down to the town and said, hey, can we do this? And then, you know, we started that meeting, Crystal, you went to on a Monday, and our march was that Sunday. So we did our whole event in 6 days. And it ended up being a great event. Joe and Tyrell were there speaking. We shut down our town. We marched from our middle school down to a park about a mile away. And, you know, we ended up in our town over 12,000 people. I would say, at least for the march portion, we ended up having probably 12 to 1,400 people show up and march down the street.
Certainly.
Yeah. And so once we got to the park, we had some powerful speakers. We actually even had our chief of police speak, and he killed it, said exactly, you know, what he needed to say. We were all, you know, incredibly gracious and behind him. And then we had a few people speak. I spoke from the parental point of view. Crystal emceed the event for us. And, you know, we had a girl named Trinity that just killed it. You know, she was
Trinity,
a high school student who she had the story that no one wanted to believe was happening. And she opened so many eyes. And to this day, people still say, wow, Trinity, amazing. So I think we had a great event. It was exactly what we wanted it to be, and it exceeded my expectations. Anyways, Crystal, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, Marcus is exactly right. It happened like so quickly. Literally, I was at work on a Monday morning. I was actually in my classroom, but teaching remotely. That's another story. But we were, I'm on my phone chatting about, who wants to go to one of these protests tonight or later in the week. And then when somebody mentioned, if, the town next door is doing something, why don't we do it too? And I was like, let me put out a little poll and see if anyone's interested. And like within 15 minutes, we were like, okay, it's on this Sunday. Let's do it. How are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
And for me, at the moment, I was thinking like, in the grocery store parking lot, I'm imagining like a small vigil. We hadn't gotten to any of the details yet. But by the end of that day, it had grown into a full-on march. It had grown into a huge program. And it just blew up beyond anything that I think, maybe it was just me. Maybe I was the one with the small visions and everybody else saw this. But it seemed like nobody saw this coming. And there were definitely moments where I was like, wow, I kind of bit off a lot. And then there was other moments where I was like, I kind of wish that we'd actually planned it quicker because, with that time lapse, it was like more time for problems to arise. But in the end, it was, you all were there. I just can't speak highly enough about the community and how much they impressed me. I wasn't sure what I was going to get. Like I alluded to earlier, I haven't lived in this area very long. I don't know a lot of people here. Yes, I had faith, and I was optimistic, but I was also, trying not to be naive and be realistic. But it was an absolutely beautiful day by everyone's account.
It's amazing. Shout out to Medway and shout out to you all. That's amazing. Actually, it's crazy how similar things are. Latoya and I decided to do this on a Monday 2 weeks ago. We just put on a planning call, called a few people that Wednesday, and then maybe that Thursday we put out the Facebook invite and people just expressed interest. And we saw by the end of the next week, 2,000 registrations, interested people going. And then really amazingly, a lot of co-sponsors, Fairmont Copley, which is that 5-star hotel, was like, how can we help? Water was like, here's 500 water bottles. Trinity Church was like, use our square. And like you all, we also had some other things that happened. We also, at the same day, found out that the white supremacy march was happening near us. And so there was some fear on both Latoya and I's part, where we're like, we feel kind of responsible. How do we engage police to protect us while also letting them know that we're here to ensure that they understand where we stand? So that was an interesting balance, but we were excited by the response. Our first speaker was Carla Sheffield, whose son was murdered by police.
Yes.
And the second speaker was Rachel Rollins, the district attorney, who was a Black mother, who hugged her at the end of it and let her know that she's going to be working with her. I mean, it's amazing, right? And then we had a series of other Black women and Black mothers who were elected speak about issues. We didn't want to just talk about public safety because it's not about Black Lives Matter and our death, but in our life. And so Black maternal health matters because we're 3 times as more likely to die during childbirth.
Right.
So as soon as your child is a Black person in your womb, the statistics already is stacked against them. Every step of the way. And then we have education and public safety and economic justice. And so we had a series of speakers talk about that and talk about action. And then at the end, we had that call to action from Michelle Wu, who was a city councilor in Boston, who is not Black, as someone speaking to an audience of actually mostly non-Black mothers to tell them what their role in this is. And that was really cool. We had a lot of children there. That always just brings some level of hope. Shout out to Kappa Alpha Psi, who was passing out roses, Black mothers. So it was just a great, hopeful, and emotionally charged event. we didn't expect it, but I think everyone was looking for a type of protest, especially people with children, that they can attend. That was part of the reason why I created it as well. Is I didn't feel comfortable going to protests without knowing exactly what was going to happen, knowing that I had a child. And so I had to create one myself with LaToya. And a lot of other mothers and parents felt that way as well.
Wow.
That was a very real, I guess, question for us as well, Sarah. There was something that I didn't really anticipate was that several people reached out to us in the days prior to the march asking, like, are you sure this is going to be safe? And I was like, no. Like, no, I can't. I'm not sure. You know, of course, you know, we're doing everything we can to make sure that it is. But like, do you see the world? Like, no, I can't assure that. You know, I wished that I could. I wanted to be able to tell everybody that it was going to be okay. But at the end of it, I just told them it's going to be worth it. That's all I could tell them. It has to happen.
I want to piggyback that question, Crystal, and I want to ask, because it's great to hear about the support that you guys received, right? And that not only friends, family, neighbors, corporations joined in, but was there any resistance that you guys received, felt, whether during, before, after? You know, what has occurred that was people saying, no, we don't want this?
Well, the thing about Medway is it's just a really, really wonderful town. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me here about that. We have some great people here. We don't have a huge population of very overtly racist people. There was a handful of, you know, trolls and whatnot, you know, for lack of a better term. But there were a lot of people who resisted, and they came up with every reason under the book, other than, you know, the cause itself, to have a problem with what we were doing. You know, the obvious one with COVID, I understand that that's, you know, a concern for a lot of people. But I mean, I'd be remiss to say that it's peculiar that often the people who were worried about COVID were also the people that were very outspoken about how, you know, we're doing too much and masks are too much and reopening the economy.
The irony in that, yes.
Yeah. And then it really hit home for me. It was actually just in one of the, a parent social media group that drew attention to the fact, which I didn't even realize, that the date we chose for the march was actually the date that our seniors were supposed to have graduated this year. And I mentioned that in some of my opening remarks about how I didn't want to be there because I would have preferred to have been at my son's high school graduation. And I realized how petty that may have sounded to outsiders, you know, people that weren't aware of the backstory. It sounded like, what does that have to do with anything? This is not about your kid. It's not about a high school graduation. It's not the point here. But the backstory was that there was a lot of backlash. There was actually some parents that had gone so far as to suggest that nothing should happen in Medway on that day that's not for our children. There should be nothing else. Nothing else should be allowed to happen in this town that's not for these graduates. So, you know, we tried to, you know, respond, you know, diplomatically and try to explain, you know, that, you know, one, we were not responsible for canceling graduation, nor COVID, nor anything else. And, you know, people can march any day, regardless of a pandemic. And then finally, at one point I said, you know, I understand where you all are coming from. It's frustrating. I said, but for me, I'm going to march for my son. And a few people actually made comments to the effect of, oh, well, that's nice for your son, but what about the kids that worked hard all year to get scholarships and achieve all of these awards and do all these wonderful things? So, like, this is for your son, but there's all these other kids that have done all these great things. You know, not overtly saying it, but, you know, implying otherwise about my child.
Yeah, I thought the other big thing that we heard a lot on social media as well, because obviously everything is happening through social media, right now. But, there was a bunch of people that said, we don't need this here in Medway. We're fine here. Like, this isn't a problem here. Why don't you do it somewhere else? And so that one, I really wish that the people that were saying that were at the march, because they would have heard otherwise. And, there was a lot of people that went to the march that did report back to them. And I think people are either in denial these days that racism exists, or it doesn't affect them, so they don't want to open their eyes to see it. It's, they're privileged enough to just go on about their lives and just live without having to, see what's going on around them. So.
Well, I think there's a theme here again, that whenever you want to do anything, there's always resistance. And you have to be careful about not amplifying it. So I made a mistake. We were interviewed on Boston 25 the week before, and I went into the comment box.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Racism is insane. It was like, why don't you march for Black on Black crime? Things like, you're not a good example to children.
Wow.
Just very overt racism. And I made the mistake of looking, but I'm also glad I looked, because sometimes you need to know why you do this, that it really exists, and that's even more reason why you need to amplify it and go harder. And then the day of, we had Ayanna Presley tweeted out, and I also went into the comment box the day of. Second mistake. And, she was saying nice things, and underneath it was like vitriol, like, make sure you teach her not to loot, talking about me. It was just, yeah, I was like, I didn't know these people really exist, because they're not going to say it to your face, but to see it is fascinating. But we were so overwhelmed by the support of the people that did show up, and the love, and how much people, we had so many donations unsolicited of people like, what do you need? What do you need? To a point where I'm like, we're actually okay.
Wow.
We have everything that we need. And so it's interesting how social media allows for like the darkness to fester, because a lot of this is coming from social media, right? No one's going to say it to your face. But when you give people space to shine light and do positive things and bring a good message into the world, that is amplified. That's not necessarily on social media, but it's amplified. And so it becomes even more important to me. What I've learned is you always face resistance, even from people who believe in Black Lives Matter, said things like, we don't need another march. It's too close to Father's Day. Why are we making it about mothers? Just anything under the sun.
Some people don't even believe.
Well, we can't talk about mothers if it's Father's Day. Don't you know? Whoa. We can't talk about marching when there's graduations. Well, like the things that are being conflated here. Like
Any excuse we do.
What?
Yeah.
Any excuse.
And Sarah, you did remind me, we actually did have an incident the day of the march. And Joe, and Tyrell, I don't even know if you know this. When we were walking down, our main road is 109, and there's a bunch of businesses there. And an employee actually came out of one of the local businesses and shouted at, the white marchers with us, you guys know you're white, right? And that white lives matter. And the police went right over to him. He ran back into his establishment. But he tried it. But yeah, so we did have an instance where someone did try to, do it outside of the keyboard, which was interesting. But I think, it happened so quickly and the line was so long that it didn't take away anything from the march. I don't think a lot of people knew it happened.
I certainly didn't know that happened. And it's the irony in the fact that, whether it be all these excuses or just some folks that will say like, why are you protesting? We don't do that here. We don't need another protest. Why don't you peacefully protest? And protesting is as American as apple pie. right? Literally, as American as apple pie. And more so to that point, protesting is a civil right that is protected under the First Amendment. So, it's a right that each and every citizen of America has to protest. And more so than that, like I talked about the history of protesting, the Boston Tea Party, women's suffrage, the Million Man March, Colin Kaepernick taking the knee. I mean, we can go on and on. There are so many examples of protesting that happen. And the folks that are against whatever the movement is moving towards, they will find any reason to suggest that protest shouldn't happen. I wanted to ask you guys a question. Even in the midst of that, having those issues that were small and minor, and as we mentioned, a lot of it is through social media and through keyboard gangsters, as I like to call them. What was the best tool? Was it also social media then to be able to galvanize folks to get out your message? Because I think for any rally or march or protest, organization is one of the biggest keys, right? You have to be able to have a clear message and organize people so they show up and they know what they're showing up to.
That's such a good point, Terrell.
Absolutely.
There's number one, you're right. You need to have your message clear. And so we worked on that and making sure it's succinct, not too complicated, and just stick with it. The other thing is we created contrast, right? We were in front of Trinity Church, mothers and children saying beautiful, positive things. And across the street were the white supremacists just acting a fool. And we made sure that media saw that contrast, which is exactly what they wrote about. And that is what we've always been. I think Black people are peaceful people.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Yes, Black people are
people in the back.
Thank you.
And showing that, like, listen, we're here to stand up for our rights. If you don't want to be peaceful, that's okay too. But we have a strength that just resonated. And I know all the media that came felt it, right? Especially with Black mothers, and especially Black mothers who actually did lose their son and were there. And who still maintained a level of dignity and power that you can just feel. Carla Sheffield, I'll say her name again, shout out to her. And meanwhile, folks who have lost nothing across the street are acting crazy. Can you imagine if the roles were reversed?
We all know. We don't need to imagine. We know. We do know exactly what would be happening if the roles were reversed. Social media was huge for us as well. It was important for us in the very beginning to get our messaging clear, which we needed to solidify even for ourselves before we could, push it out to the community. For us, it was very different than what was going on in the Boston communities. We don't have issues of police brutality towards anybody in our small town yet. That's not something that we directly deal with per se. So we were not fighting our town officials for anything. We were not demanding anything of anybody from, anybody in leadership roles in our community. So our audience was mainly white. So we were calling upon allies. We were calling upon our white neighbors to just listen to our small population of people of color in our community, listen to what their experiences are. I know you all want to believe. I want to believe it too. I would love to believe that we live in a utopia little town where this thing doesn't happen, but it's just not true. And as much as I know that I'm, less naive than most about this, I still heard things that put me beside myself that I was floored about, that I was so shocked occurred in our town, in our schools, things like that. So we really had to target our message for our specific audience, which also kind of created some conflict too, because there was the younger Black Lives Matter crowd. We had like some college kids that were, more in the purer Black Lives Matter movement. And they, didn't want a watered down, whitewashed version. So we were like kind of trying to tread that line with them, like, listen, like, we have the same message as you. We just have to go about it a little bit different because of our audience. And they impressed us as well. So the young people, impressed us with their ability to understand that. our police force impressed us with their ability to speak our exact message. We were nervous when we gave them the mic. We weren't quite sure exactly what they were going to say. I tried to, encourage them like away from a few phrases and whatnot. But I think everyone really looked at each other when Chief Tingley got up there and spoke and said, we underestimated this man. We didn't give him nearly enough credit. Unfortunately, I'm sure he's not the norm. I'm not trying to, paint that picture either. We were just incredibly thankful that's how it played out.
Yeah, and I think, as Crystal said, we really sat down and we said, okay, who's our target? We're not going to convert the overtly racist people that don't have any interest in hearing what we said. And, the kids that are in the Black Lives Matter movement already, they already get it. And so we need to figure out who is here that wants to be here, that we can really convert over. And that's why, as Crystal said, we tried to soften the message a little bit. We joked around a lot saying bait and switch. We went in soft with our marketing, but then we really wanted them to be hit with the message and take something away from it. And I think the other thing that worked to our advantage is, Medway Marches was not just Crystal and I. We had 8 organizers, and so we all had different, audiences, and so we were all able to reach more people. So shout out to Angelica, Amna, Raj, Lisa, Trinity, Martin. I think I got everyone. Yeah, and Crystal and I. We had a big team, and we just worked our butts off. We every single day we met for hours, just really putting this together and trying to figure out how we could best make an impact.
So I'm seriously very impressed with how quickly you tied this all together. Like 2 weeks, 6 days, and I'm like, wow. And something both of you said is people are saying, we don't need marches. We don't need that here. We don't need to march. So if I asked you, why do we march? Why did you do this? So many saying we don't need it. And clearly, by the thousands of people who showed up, we needed it. So to you, what is the point of us marching? What do you hope to gain?
For me, it was the next generation. I have small kids. So my son is 7. I have another daughter who's 3 and another daughter who's 1. And so they're all entering school now. My son Cameron is the only, this year he was not the only person of color in his classroom, but going in kindergarten year, he was the only one. And like I said, I've been there and I know how you have to straddle that line or try to figure out your identity. And so, the march for me was, how do I make this a more inclusive place for my family and to get people to understand how to treat us and welcome us and include us in conversations and not exclude us from things because, of the color of our skin, or, just teach them about things that they might be ignoring that they need to stick up. If my son's in school and he's where Trinity is and he's dealing with a lot of what was said to Trinity, and she's explaining that she's had no friends speak up for her, the teachers were not coming to her aid. And so the march was the beginning of, how do we fix these systems? How do we make sure that our neighbors know that we're going through these situations and that they need to speak up for us and be there for us? And 2, to put everyone else on notice and the organizations that are, creating these rules and curriculums and study plans that, we're not represented and we're not feeling welcomed and included, and that needs to change. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, there are so many reasons. One, I think the question is, why during a pandemic? Why march during a pandemic? That's the question I asked myself, this is a risk. We're isolated more than ever, and it is easy for people to believe that retweeting, creating those cute memes of Breonna Taylor is enough. It's not. That means you need to put yourself at risk to show up and show up no matter what. And so it was important for us to create that show and to create that opportunity and that step, because it's easy to create a tweet and have people just do that thing where they feel good about themselves after they've done it, but it doesn't change anything.
Yes.
It creates some awareness, but to have elected officials and to have people learn, number one, we wanted people to learn something, and we didn't want it to be in the privacy of their own home. They had to see each other. And it was important for our youth to speak up too. Just like Trinity, we had a youth poet named Hannah Parker, my former student, and she went through a 2-minute poem about what it feels like to be Black. And, you know, being Black is a blessing, and there's pain that people have to hear. And so I think it was so powerful, and many people said that for important for them to just hear that pain, not on a video, in person. You can't go anywhere, you see it, and you can't interrupt it, right? It's not a conversation. So those experiences are important for people to understand the urgency to hear those stories, because that's what really, there's a different part of your brain that lights up when you hear stories and interact with people, as you know, Joe.
Yeah.
So that's important, but then also that feeling that people get from it, just like you all in Medway, you can capture that energy and use that energy to push power, because people are excited, people understand in a way that they can't understand when they're isolated. And so the question is, what is next after the march? We don't know yet personally, but I'm thinking a lot about that, because we marched. Now that people have shown that commitment, how do you escalate that?
Yeah, so Crystal, if you want to kind of tell the story, feel free. But,
No, we've been grappling with the same thing. Our group of co-organizers, we have been trying to kind of hone in on what our next focuses are going to be. And, you know, we're getting somewhere. You know, we've kind of broken off into some committees. But right now, our overarching plan is that all of our programs that we're trying to get off the ground now are about raising anti-racist children who stand up for injustice. It's about evolving and empowering our adults to become more inclusive and to become advocates, and ultimately to transform our communities into places that celebrate diversity, that are fair and just, and that are something for other communities to emulate. So we are working with the school systems, we are working with advocacy groups, we are working directly with law enforcement, and we are going to be working with the Senate as well, towards Karen Spilka's working towards a diversity task force that we're hoping to inform some of the decision making there as well. So we've been really thankful. We've had several lawmakers reach out to us and express their support and ask for our input, and ask for just our advocacy, and to bring them the information and help guide them. So we appreciate them listening and the opportunity to share our experiences and our voices with them.
Yeah, it was funny. The march ended, and it's like you think there's a sigh of relief, like, wow, that went great, and now we're done. And it almost seemed like we left that day kind of unfinished. And I remember, because my wife is one of the co-organizers as well, we sat on our phones the whole night because people were just reaching out to us, writing statuses. And I can't even remember how it started, Crystal, but all of a sudden, I think we all took like a day off, and then it was, so we have to do more. Like, ooh, what's next? And so, like Crystal said, we made Medway Marches an actual organization now that, we created a vision, a mission statement, pillars. We have over 400 and I think we're almost at 450 followers now on our Facebook group. And so we've just been in planning mode ever since. It's like the march never ended. We talk daily through Microsoft Teams. Now we have committees set up there. And so we're just plugging away. And we have so many people that are reaching out, like, how can I help? How can I help? And so we're just trying to get our structure in place now so that we can just welcome everyone in and all really get to work. But the support in Medway and beyond has been amazing. And it's encouraging, that there are so many advocates that are not people of color that want to get involved. But like you said as well, Sarah, it's what's not only just what next, but how do we measure that success down the road from now? Like, what are we setting for ourselves as goals to say, wow, we're making a difference? And those are all things that we're thinking of as well.
To get all of these groups like ourselves and think about the push that we want to collectively make. Because if you're talking to a few lawmakers here, we're talking to a few here, can you imagine with that synergy? So thank you, Joe and Ty, but
connections.
Bring the people together.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually that's a great point. I think, Marcus, that is a great question. What are the next steps? Like, even just for both of your organizations, Medway Marches and March Like a Mother, but also, like, what do you think for those who were in the audience? Sarah, you've said it, you're like, all right, you came, and Crystal, you've said it too. It's like, you've come, you're here, we're happy, and then some. What is the push for the organization, and what are you telling the people they need to do?
We've actually, we're trying to harness that as well. It's these things, they can come quickly and leave quickly, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. We want to capture it. That's why we didn't want to waste any time. We realized that as far as our supporters go, there's a spectrum. We have people that, for lack of a better phrase, we're preaching to the choir. Maybe they're already doing tremendous work. Maybe they completely understand, and then we have people who actually were not even on board, before that. We do have people that were like, why do we need this? I don't know. I don't quite get it, that came to the march. And I'm going to call out too, a gentleman by the name of John Curry and a woman by the name of Denise Oakes. They both went into the march, by their own account, with some mixed feelings about it, and they both came out incredible advocates. So that alone is absolutely a win, but we want to make sure that we don't leave them hanging. We want to make sure that we're giving them the tools. So we're organizing some book groups. We're doing a 21-day challenge, where one of our co-organizers is, sharing some incredibly in-depth and thoughtful pieces of work, with articles, videos, and whatnot, and some really amazing, like, introspective prompts, and challenging everybody to, devote some time every day for 21 days towards changing their thinking and having a deeper understanding, and finding ways to spread that around. So yeah, we're trying to kind of figure out a way that we can capture everybody where they're at, so that everybody on the spectrum feels supported. And that's our challenge. So if anybody has any recommendations, any suggestions, send them our way, because it is a huge task. We're ready for it, but we also really welcome any support and suggestions.
We have already gotten some traction. The city council has a Black agenda that we've signed on to, and we've pushed for police in schools to turn into school counselors.
Let's go.
And
We need
now
that.
that people are paying attention, now that we built this power, we have things that we care about, like getting metal detectors out of schools. And that's stuff that we're seeing city councils put into their plans. And we're excited by, because if I had just done that, organizing only in my day job, it makes moves, but there's something to be said when you're consistent. And so that, and there's a birthing center that's being built, that people are contributing to financially, and it's going to be built in Mattapan. So there are things happening. It's not just legislative. I think there's also, like, people just want to know how to give money towards these efforts. And we're seeing that happen. We got to do a better job in figuring out how to incubate. And so we'd love your partnership over from Medway. But we're thinking about that as well.
Absolutely, because, some of the things we're trying to do, we are thinking either we will need money to put on certain events, or, there's ways that people want to contribute financially, and, everything doesn't have to go to the large, organizations. Obviously money is helpful wherever in the cause, but I think there's more vested interest for people for things that are, really local. So, even for us, we looked at, maybe our Black book section isn't large enough in the library. So we do a fundraiser to buy more books there. Can we create scholarships for people of color here in Medway? Different things like that where, we're looking on how can we use our impact to help our community, basically. So let's absolutely stay in contact, Sarah.
Awesome.
Did I mention that I know these people? Like, have I said that yet? Like, I know these people. Sorry. I just always like. I told Sarah this actually. I was texting and I was fangirling in her inbox, like, you're so great. And so, like, I love fangirling about people I know. I love celebrating success of people generally, but when I know them, I'm trying to hype you to the next level because I'm proud. I am proud. I'm so proud of all of you and the work that you have been inspired to do. And for me, I'm like, that means that I am. One, it challenges me to want to continue to be better, my best. Oh, I'm not doing enough. Did you organize merch? No, I didn't. So, y'all are challenging me to what am I going to do? What is my part in this? And yes, there are so many different ways to be an activist. And so, but you challenge me to continue on that journey. And I know that you did that for so many others. And is it true that none of you had organized a march before this?
No.
Never.
Okay, so did everybody hear that one more time? I'm gonna ask one more time. Had any of y'all organized a march before this?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so, we all have kids, so we're busy.
Right? Every single organizer has a child, okay? Every single one of them. So it is possible. It is possible. So if I wanted to organize a march, if one of our listeners is here wanting to organize a march and is literally like, I don't know how. I don't know where to start. You guys got your chief of police, you got councilwomen. Like, I feel like I can't do that. And so maybe I'm just not. Can you tell them some steps? Can you speak to them? Can you inspire them?
You don't need permission. That was what we had most anxiety about. Would we offend the other activists who've been doing this a lot? That was the biggest thing. It wasn't just logistics. And we actually waited a little bit longer trying to get their permission, but they were so busy with their work that when we actually took the step, they were supportive. It took a couple days. So one thing I'll say is, if this is truly for the cause, people will know. So don't worry about that. Make sure you touch base with them, engage them, but don't worry too much. And then do it. Like, just like corny, but just like Nike, just do it. The logistics will follow. People will come and help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one thing. It's that I didn't expect. People will help.
Yeah, I was going to say two things. I was going to say one, and I think COVID really helped in this, is keep it simple. Keep it, dedicated to the message. Initially we were like, should we have someone come hand out masks? Should we have someone fundraising? Should we have waters giving out? Should we do this? Should we do that? And, we had a few people volunteer for some of those things and they ended up happening, but it wasn't our core focus. And the other thing I would say is, can you do it by yourself? Absolutely. Keep things, simple, get a little Facebook page going and spread the word. But it really helps if you find like-minded people that are as passionate as you are, to help you just get those things done. But it's not hard to do. It's just putting your passion to work.
Absolutely.
I mean, I definitely agree with everything. One of the funniest things people kept asking was, like, why? I can't believe you're allowed to do this. was shocked. I mean, I'm talking intelligent people. I'm like, we're not asked for permission. Yeah, we did go to the town to ask for certain supports. Had they decided not to provide those supports, I don't think that we would have not done the march. We weren't asking for permission, and I can't stress it enough. You don't need permission.
Mhm.
You know,
It's your right.
And the town actually put that out on their page. They said, you know, we're here to support, but they can do whatever they want to do.
mhm.
Absolutely.
That is incredible.
I did call the police station the first time, and I got hung up on twice. So we had white allies call the police station, let them know that they need to support it, and they came and were very supportive. But I will be honest, the first 2 times I was scared. But I wish I had known, don't be scared. This is just part of the process.
Right, right.
So, quick question. People want to support. Where can we find you?
You can go to marchlikeamother.org. We have merchandise now.
Oh,
Yeah, you can get shirts because people love the shirts, and so we put them up. And you can also support by looking at the organizations that we had talk, as well as supporting our organization financially.
Amazing. Yeah, we are, our website is under construction, but you can go to it, medwaymarches.com. You can also find us on Facebook, which is our primary means right now. We have a group, Medway Marches, on Facebook. And then we have an Instagram, Medway Marches, as well, that we are slowly building out. But as we said, there's so much work to do. We are trying to, you know, really get some things moving before we spend too much time and, you know, a lot of the fluff. We want to make sure our main objectives are being met now that we've really defined as a group who we are.
That is seriously amazing. And one comment I want to highlight, Lindsay, you are right, Lindsay Schultz. Yes, our children will absolutely be the change, and that is why adults need to be setting these amazing examples and moving out the way so that children as well, the youth, can lead, because they are truly the future. And I would like to just, because I'm still celebrating, today's my Independence Day, and I feel like this is so appropriate to what you said. We've come now to a time of testing. We must not fail. Let us close the springs of racial poison. Pray for wise, understanding hearts. Let us lay aside irrelevant differences and make our nation whole. That is Lyndon B. Johnson, and that was our 36th president. I think that's what Donald Trump meant to say when he said, "Make America Great Again." He meant to say, "Let us make our nation whole." So we have a couple of announcements, though. Don't let us forget, because I almost did, actually. In 5 days, people, 5 days, y'all need to not be shopping. Nothing. It is Blackout Day, July 7. Do not spend a penny. Please commit to this day of solidarity. Please, 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 please. We need to show them we're serious.
Okay.
And where can they find us? One last time?
marchlikeamother.org.
Yes. And?
Got it, Marcus.
Yeah, medwaymarches.com and Medway Marches on Facebook.
Yes. And you can find us as well at 2B Podcast on Instagram, social media.
We know what you meant. We know what you meant. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We're there with you.
Yes, 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 yes. And until then, remember
to be good to yourself,
to be true to yourself,
To
educate yourself.
Right.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much for having us.